the pursuit of doing things perfectly and just having more and more people watch those that content would eventually have diminishing returns, or you can already tell that it can have diminishing returns if it gets in the way of other work or other priorities like family life and leisure, and like activities of daily living. So in that sense, that it's perfection, and it's also probably perfectionistic thinking that says if you stop doing what you're doing, then you're going to have this catastrophic consequence.
I probably even had a little emotional perfectionism there because I was like, well, I don't want to do too many I don't want to reassure myself by assessing that it probably won't make that big of a difference. I kind of wanted to take the surrender opportunity, but I found I found it myself doing the CBT like thing as well. Sometimes it's unclear whether or not reassurance, whether or not sometimes it's unclear whether or not the CBT like thing is helpful or not. Just from stuff I
Yes.
hear in group therapy, and I haven't quite matched the pattern yet, but like sometimes in group therapy, I'll hear you say to someone like, yeah, maybe you don't want to minimize there or rationalize it. Maybe you just want to like accept the possibility that the bad thing could happen.
One perspective is kind of signal versus noise in identifying where do you have problems to solve versus where do you have uncertainty and worry. And then also, where are you adding catastrophic thinking on top of either problems to solve or worry? So first off, and I just want to say, as I'm thinking about it right now, oftentimes when anxiety becomes demoralization, then it's a cue that you've become more fused to what you're afraid of. So if it might start as like, what if I'm never financially secure? And if that happens frequently over time, that can become, I'm not going to become financially secure. And then that's demoralizing. So it sounds like it went from being a fear to a fusion in your mind. And that's related to demoralization. So let's see if that's actually true.
I would schedule a time to show up to do it, and then just show up with the attitude of like, well, this is an experiment. More than anything, it will get something off my to-do list, but it's also an experiment. And what I can do here is um, see what kinds of things show up. What kind of thoughts do I have? What kind of feelings do I have? Um, and kind of try to be present instead of thinking about the past or the future, or just try to focus on the present and see which way my mind wants to go in terms of the past or the future, because I know that it's not a very present focused process for me when I go to apply for these jobs. I'm usually either in the future or the past. So I think, yeah, just showing up and being ready, and maybe even writing out some thoughts. Like if I get if I go down a rabbit hole, maybe write out some of the worries that I'm having. Might be a good exercise. This big long set of what ifs are kind of in the back of my head, and often if I write those down, they're a lot less scary. Because there are so many of them and they're coming so fast that like you never really kind of say one, look at it and go, okay, and then move on to the next one. They're just kind of all repeating themselves. And what if I don't get an internship next summer? What if I can't pay my rent next summer? What if? And I think writing them out will help get them out of my head and onto paper. That way I can actually be like, okay, when there's a crowd of worries in your head, the crowd seems bigger than the sum of its individual parts. When I lay them out on paper, it's like, okay, well, looking at each one of these things, especially the ones that are more, towards the end, where it's like, these really catastrophic things I'm fearing, don't seem particularly likely.
To summarize what you're saying, you're going to pick a time to do the task. You're going to be mindful during the task, noticing that your mind is going to want to go to the past or to the future. And in the past, it would be ruminating about the mistakes that you've made. In the future, it would be like catastrophizing the ways that things might not work out in the future. And in both cases, those are just thoughts. They're not predictions or facts or messages to you. They're just the types of thoughts that show up when you're doing something challenging in the present moment. And then you're also in the present moment going to work to get distance from any other intrusions you have by like writing them out. A lot of people, when they make a commitment to someone else, like I'm going to give a talk in front of a class, they know that they're going to do it. So the hardest part is the anticipatory anxiety, where they're just feeling tons and tons of uncertainty about how it's going to go, but there's no chance that they're not going to do it. And I think when you make a commitment to yourself, it can be really difficult to tolerate the anticipatory anxiety that you have, because you can easily break that commitment with yourself. So if you start shifting things that you value into commitments you make to yourself, and then predicting that you're going to have anticipatory anxiety and having a plan for that, and then also having a plan for what's going to happen when you're doing the committed action, and then how you're going to treat yourself afterwards, which should be compassionately rather than self-critically, then you're more likely to be able to accomplish these things that you commit to yourself, and you'll trust yourself. Oftentimes, when you're practicing, you're first practicing how to prepare for the anxious moment. So how to be present with the anxiety that you're expecting, stay in the present moment rather than being in the past or the future, and then preparing for how you'll feel afterwards, which is typically ruminative and self-critical. If you were really sensitized, like the mind just finds ways that you've done something wrong if you're really, really anxious about something. And so if you're ready at that point with compassion, and you relate to your anticipatory anxiety well, where you just see it as uncertainty that you have when you're doing something challenging and uncertain, then oftentimes you'll still get anxious during the situation, but afterwards you'll be kind, and the next time you'll have less anticipatory anxiety.